The night was quiet in the old observatory at the edge of the Nevada desert. Only the wind spoke, soft, dry, and restless. The stars looked like a million white eyes watching from the dark sky above. Inside, a single light was on, and a man sat alone with a cold cup of coffee and a screen full of numbers. His name was Dr. Elias Hart, though most people just called him Eli. He was 45, with tired eyes and messy hair that always looked like he had run his hands through it too many times. He was not the smartest man in the building, but he was the one who stayed the latest. And tonight, that made all the difference. Eli worked for the Deep Signal Project, a group that had spent years listening to the universe. Decades ago, they had picked up something strange, a signal that repeated every 7 minutes. It was too structured to be natural, but too complicated to be human. It became known as the 10,000-year-old code, because when scientists traced its echo through space, they found it came from a dying star that had gone dark 10,000 years ago. No one had solved it. Not the supercomputers, not the AI models, not the teams of linguists, mathematicians, or cryptographers. Governments had given up on it. Funding had dried out. But Elias Hart didn't give up easily. He wasn't supposed to be working that night. The lab was technically closed for maintenance, but Eli had snuck in with a thermos of strong coffee and his old notebook. He preferred solving problems with paper and pencil. Computers made sense of numbers, but he liked to feel the pattern, like working on a crossword or a riddle. On the table beside him sat a stack of puzzles he had collected over the years. He always said, "The universe speaks in patterns. You just have to listen like it's a game." His colleagues laughed, but he didn't mind. He wasn't chasing fame, he just wanted to understand. At 2:17 a.m., the signal came again. Beep, pause, beep, beep. It sounded like a heartbeat that had forgotten how to live. Eli leaned closer to the screen, tracing the numbers on the monitor with his finger. Same loop. Same rhythm. He muttered, "You've been saying the same thing for 10,000 years. What are you trying to tell us?" He took a sip of his coffee, cold, bitter, and reached for his pen. That's when it happened. The pen rolled off the desk, and as he bent down to pick it up, his elbow knocked over the cup. Coffee spilled across his papers in a messy brown wave. "Ah, come on," he shouted, jumping back. But as he looked at the soaked pages, his eyes froze. The stains had formed odd shapes, dark spots and light spaces across the page filled with numbers. And by pure chance, or maybe something else, one line of numbers now connected perfectly with another. A small pattern appeared. It wasn't random. It looked like a crossword grid. Eli blinked, confused, then started to laugh softly. "No way," he whispered. He grabbed a pencil and began tracing the pattern. The numbers were arranged in blocks, 3 across, 2 down, repeating again and again. He had seen something like it before. Not in a lab, but in a puzzle magazine. The alien code wasn't a sentence. It was a patterned puzzle, a kind of interlocking grid. His heart began to race. He wiped the coffee off the paper and typed the new pattern into the computer. The machine beeped. The screen flickered. For the first time in decades, the repeating code changed. Lines of fresh symbols scrolled across the monitor. Slowly at first, then faster, like the signal was waking up. Eli stared, wide-eyed. "That's impossible," he whispered. "It shouldn't react." The code had never changed before. It was like touching an ancient stone and feeling it move under your fingers. For a long moment, Eli didn't move. The hum of the computers was the only sound in the room. His hands shook as he hit record. The new data streamed in, symbols, sounds, and pulses forming a wave he couldn't yet understand. But deep down, he knew one thing for sure. Something had just noticed him. He sat back, breathing hard, staring at the new pattern. It looked almost alive, pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. The thought sent a chill down his spine. He suddenly felt very small, like a child who had just tapped the shoulder of a sleeping giant. Outside, the wind howled louder. The stars seemed brighter. Eli leaned forward again, whispering softly to the screen, "You've been waiting a long time, haven't you?" No one was there to answer, but in that silence the code blinked once, twice, and for a brief moment he could swear he heard something behind the static. A voice, not human, not clear, but curious. He didn't know it yet, but this was the night that would change everything. A tired human with coffee and crosswords had just woken a code older than history, the 10,000-year-old. Alien code had finally met the mind that could understand. Yet Dr. Elias Hart didn't sleep that night. When the code changed, it felt as if something ancient had opened one eye, and now it was watching him. The glow of the monitor filled the dark observatory, painting his tired face in blue light. His hands shook as he flipped through his notebook, the paper still stained with dried coffee. The old code had been a steady loop, numbers, symbols, gaps. But now, after his accident, the pattern was new. Alive. It responded every time he pressed a key like it was listening. He should have reported it. That was protocol. But if he did, the lab would lock it down, the government would classify it, and he'd never see it again. So he made a choice. He unplugged the main link and saved the data to his own drive. It was risky. Stupid even, but curiosity was a stronger force than fear. By morning, the sun burned over the desert, turning the sand gold. Elias poured himself another cup of coffee, his fifth, and stared at the screen. The alien symbols glowed faintly like letters from another world. He spoke out loud, half to himself, half to the code. "Let's see what you are. My friend?" He tried comparing it to old languages, Sumerian, Sanskrit, even Morse code. Nothing matched. Then he noticed something small but strange. Every seventh symbol repeated in rhythm. 7. The same number of minutes between each transmission. 7 wasn't random. 7 was human logic. It was the number of days in a week, the notes in music, the questions in a crossword column he did every Sunday. A slow smile formed on his face. "This isn't just a code," he whispered. "It's a pattern game." He began sketching it out like a crossword grid. Rows and columns, intersecting lines, repeating rhythms. Each symbol might represent a sound or an idea. Maybe both. He filled the empty boxes with guesses, then erased them. Filled them again and erased once more. Hours passed unnoticed. By noon, his office looked like a storm had hit it. Papers everywhere. Coffee cups stacked like trophies of exhaustion. Yet somewhere in the chaos, he began to see something new. Structure. Each symbol had two parts, a top line and a base mark. The top changed often. The base almost never did. It reminded him of how English letters shared shapes like P and R cousins with one added line. Maybe these aliens used a similar system. He tested the theory. He took one repeating symbol and replaced it with a letter, A, the next, B, then C. Soon, his screen was full of strange but almost readable text. Then he noticed a sequence that looked like it spelled, "hello," if you read it diagonally. His heart skipped. No way. He copied that section into a translator. The result was nonsense, but the diagonal idea stuck in his mind. Crosswords weren't always read left to right. They moved in curves, diagonals, even spirals. What if the message was meant to be read like a puzzle, not a book? He adjusted the grid, twisting the data in a spiral shape. And suddenly new lines appeared. Patterns of 3, then 5, then 8. It was the Fibonacci sequence, nature's own code. The same pattern that shaped galaxies, shells, and sunflowers. Elias leaned back amazed. "You clever thing," he said softly. "You wanted to be found by someone who thinks in patterns." He realized something big. This message wasn't made for machines. It was meant for a mind, a human one. Someone patient, curious, and maybe a bit obsessed. Someone like him. That night, he sat on the roof of the observatory staring at the sky. The stars were sharp and endless. Somewhere out there, whoever made this message might still be watching. 10,000 years was a long time to wait, but the signal had never stopped. It was like a cosmic whisper saying, "We are still here." Elias thought about the civilizations that rose and fell while that code crossed space. Maybe the senders were gone, or maybe they were waiting for a reply. He whispered into the wind, "You've waited long enough." The next day he made his move. He decided to send a small pulse back, just a harmless test. He recreated the code's rhythm, copied its first few beats, and added one simple change. An extra pulse at the end. A human signature. When he hit send, the screen flickered. For a second, nothing happened. Then the data monitor flashed, a sharp new burst of light and sound. The code had replied. It didn't just echo his signal. It mirrored it almost perfectly, but added another pulse. Like it was saying hello back, Elias froze. His heart pounded in his chest. The computer's fan whirred louder, as if the whole machine could feel the tension in the air. He checked the logs. The time gap between his message and the reply was only 3 seconds. That meant the reply didn't come from deep space. It came from orbit. Someone, or something, was already here. He stood there in silence, staring at the blinking lights on the monitor. For a long time he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly he smiled. "This just got interesting," he whispered. Outside, the desert wind carried the faint hum of the observatories, old radio dishes turning toward the stars again, listening for the next message. Elias Hart had solved the first layer of a 10,000-year-old alien riddle. But in doing so, he had sent an answer. And now, the universe had answered back. The night air inside the observatory felt heavy, as if it carried secrets. Dr. Elias Hart hadn't left the lab in 2 days. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled, and his brain was buzzing from too much caffeine and too little sleep. Empty coffee cups surrounded his keyboard like tiny soldiers who had fought and died for science. On the monitor, the alien symbols danced slowly, lines of light across a black background. They seemed to breathe, to change when he blinked. Elias had spent hours rearranging them, building and breaking theories. He thought he was close to something, but every new guess ended in failure. He leaned forward, rubbing his temples. "Come on," he muttered. "You talked once. Talk again." He checked his logs. The mysterious reply, the one that came only 3 seconds after his transmission, still didn't make sense. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, intelligent. But no one else in the world had seen it. He hadn't reported it, not yet. He wanted one more breakthrough first, something solid to prove he wasn't just chasing static. Hours passed. The hum of the machines filled the silence. The desert wind outside howled like a warning. Elias scribbled symbols on a notepad, trying to match repeating shapes. His handwriting was wild, shaky. He took another sip of coffee and frowned. It had gone cold. He reached to reheat it, but his elbow hit the keyboard. A random string of keys appeared on screen, numbers and letters that made no sense. He cursed under his breath. Perfect. Great work, Elias. He went to delete them, but then froze. The moment he hit backspace, the code on the monitor shifted. The pattern changed. At first, he thought it was just a glitch. But the symbols began moving on their own, realigning into a new shape. A spiral. Elias stared, his pulse racing. No way. He hadn't programmed anything like that. It was as if his mistake, the extra characters he had typed, had triggered something. The symbols glowed brighter and a low tone came from the speakers. Not static this time, more like a hum. Deep, slow, almost musical. He watched in awe as the spiral pattern began to pulse in rhythm with the sound. Faster, then slower, then faster again. It reminded him of breathing. He leaned closer to the mic and whispered, "Can you hear me?" The hum stopped. Then one symbol blinked 3 times. Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. He whispered again, "If you understand, blink once." One blink. He stared at the screen, wide-eyed. His heart hammered in his chest. Oh my God, it's real. He hit the record button and began to document everything. "Entry number 47, he said softly into his recorder. Signal responded to direct input. Possible 2-way communication. Response delay, 2 seconds. He looked at the glowing spiral again. If you are a program, repeat the spiral. Instead, the pattern changed completely, forming what looked like a handprint. 5 long, glowing fingers pressed against the screen from the inside. Elias stumbled back, his chair squeaking. "What are you?" he whispered. The code pulsed again, this time displaying symbols that formed a new phrase in broken English. "You see us?" Elias covered his mouth. His fingers trembled. "Us," he whispered. "How many of you are there?" The reply came instantly. "All." Waiting. The room felt colder. The air seemed to hum like static. Elias tried to think logically. The code couldn't be alive. It must be an old AI system, a digital echo left behind by some extinct civilization. But if that was true, how was it responding to him? How did it learn English? He typed, "How long have you waited?" The answer came slowly, symbol by symbol. "Longer than your world has spoken." He stared at those words for a long time. 10,000 years, maybe more. A message written before humans had even learned to write their own names. He felt a strange mix of wonder and fear. He whispered, "Why me?" The code blinked again. "Because you play." Elias frowned. "Play, what does that mean?" The screen filled with familiar symbols, numbers arranged like a crossword grid. The same pattern he had first seen when the coffee spilled on his notes. The code was repeating it back to him. He realized what it meant. He had solved the puzzle not by logic or equations, but by accident, by treating it like a game. That was why the code responded. It wasn't searching for power or intelligence. It was searching for imagination. His mistake wasn't a failure. It was the key. The lights in the lab flickered. The machines began to hum louder. A soft vibration shook the floor. The spiral on the screen grew brighter until the whole room glowed pale white. Elias shielded his eyes. "Stop!" he shouted. The glow faded. On the screen, new text appeared. "Human, you opened the gate." He stared at the words, stunned. "Gate? What gate?" No response. The code stopped moving. The hum went silent. Then, the radio antenna outside began to turn on its own, aligning toward a patch of sky that hadn't been scanned in years. Elias ran to the window. The desert sky was perfectly still, yet his instruments were alive, spinning, searching, listening. He turned back to the monitor. The last message blinked one more time. "We are coming through." Then the screen went black. For a long time, Elias just stood there, hearing only his heartbeat. The silence felt endless. He didn't know what gate he had opened or what was about to come through it. But somewhere in the cold distance of space, something had heard him. And now it was answering. The observatory was silent. The computer screen still glowed faintly, the alien symbols frozen mid-pattern. Dr. Elias Hart sat motionless, his face lit by the pale blue light. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but his mind was burning. He replayed the last line over and over in his head. "We are coming through." Coming through what? A gate? Space-time? He didn't know. But he knew one thing. The signal had changed forever. He reached for his notebook, flipping through pages filled with notes, equations, and sketches of the alien symbols. His handwriting grew shakier with every line. The more he studied, the less human it looked. It wasn't just a code anymore. It was talking. The first response came at 3:42 a.m. The machines turned on by themselves, their lights flickering like heartbeat pulses. A low hum filled the air, steady and calm, almost like breathing. Then the symbols began to move again, slow, deliberate, as if something was waking up. Elias whispered, "You're back." Lines formed across the screen. Not random this time, but shaped like words. The translator software automatically kicked in, and a rough message appeared in English letters. "You answered. You think. You listen." Elias's pulse quickened. His throat went dry. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm listening." "Who are you?" The reply took almost a full minute. "We were builders. You are the inheritors." He stared at the sentence. The builders. The same word that had appeared once before, in a fragment of the ancient data logs that no one could translate. Every scientist who saw that term before dismissed it as coincidence. But now it had meaning. Builders of what? Elias typed quickly. Worlds, voices, paths. "And where are you now?" There was a pause. Then came the answer. "Gone, waiting to return." Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. His eyes darted to the radio monitors. The frequency was rising again, high and sharp, forming invisible waves through the desert air. He switched to live spectrogram view. The frequencies weren't random noise. They formed shapes, circular, repeating patterns, almost like a star map. He printed the data and taped the sheet to the wall. The image showed a spiral galaxy, not the Milky Way. A smaller cluster of dots pulsed at the bottom corner of the image. A coordinate marker. Elias realized with a shock, and it was pointing somewhere. He ran a calculation. The coordinates pointed to a point beyond Neptune. No spacecraft had ever gone that far with a functioning relay. But something out there was active and in broadcasting. He typed again. "What is waiting at these coordinates?" The reply was instant. The seed, the memory. "What kind of memory?" "The one you must not open." Elias leaned back, rubbing his forehead. The room felt smaller, tighter. Every word he read made his heart pound harder. He tried to tell himself this was a trick, a glitch in translation. But deep inside he knew it wasn't. The signal had intent. It had personality, and now it had given him a warning. He checked the system logs. The data from the signal was still being recorded, pages and pages of symbols scrolling non-stop. But one line repeated every few minutes like a heartbeat through the noise. "Do not wake the builders." The phrase appeared again. And again. Elias muttered to himself. Then why send it to us? Why talk to me if I'm not supposed to open it? The computer's microphone flickered. For a split second, the system picked up a faint whisper. A low, broken voice. It wasn't static. It was speech. Because you already have. Elias froze. His blood ran cold. He looked around the empty room, half expecting someone or something to be there. But he was alone. He turned back to the screen. The spiral pattern began to twist violently, like the signal was in pain. The lights in the lab dimmed, then flared. On the monitor, new symbols appeared rapidly on him, so fast he could barely read them. He paused the feed and translated what he could. The message was fragmented, full of gaps, but a few words stood clear. They sleep in the dark sun. Do not follow. This world is not ready. Elias's heart was pounding. He realized what the star map meant. It didn't point to a planet. It pointed to something orbiting a dead star. A star that had burned out over 10,000 years ago. Whatever the builders had made was still active there, still sending signals. And now it had noticed Earth. He whispered, You said we are the inheritors. What did we inherit? The screen flickered, then displayed a single word. Their mistake. The monitor went dark again. The hum stopped. The silence was crushing. Elias sat there staring into the black screen, his hands trembling. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat. Somewhere, deep in the pit of his stomach, a truth began to settle. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a test. The next morning, the Research Council's encrypted server received an anonymous upload. A compressed file of coordinates, signal patterns, and fragments of decoded text. No one knew who sent it, but one line in the message stood out. They are not gone. They are waiting. And somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system, a faint light began to flicker, one that hadn't shone in 10,000 years. Elias Hart sat in his office that night staring out at the stars. He didn't know if he had made first contact, or started something far worse. He took a deep breath, looked at his reflection in the dark window and whispered, We were never supposed to find you, were we? The screen behind him blinked once, then twice. The code was awake again. Dr. Elias Hart had not been outside for 3 days. The blinds were closed, the lights dim, and the only glow came from the screen, the alien code still pulsing in faint blue rhythm. He had stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the spiral. The message kept repeating in the background like a ghostly whisper. Do not wake the builders. At first, Elias thought he understood what that meant. A warning. A simple stay away. But now he wasn't so sure. The more he studied, the clearer it became. The signal wasn't meant to be found. It was meant to contain something. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. The computer screen flickered, showing a replay of the latest data burst. Strange spikes appeared across the frequency, short, sharp, like pulses of anger. It's changing again, he muttered. He adjusted the filters, isolating one sound wave. When he played it back, it didn't sound like static anymore. It sounded like breathing slow, deep, heavy. Elias froze. The realization hit him like a cold wind. The signal wasn't just data, it was alive. Or something inside it was. That morning, the lab received a message from the Central Research Council. Someone had noticed his anonymous upload. Dr. Hart, your data transmission contained unauthorized coordinates. Please report for debrief immediately. Elias stared at the email. He didn't remember sending any coordinates. But he had. Somehow the system must have sent it automatically when the code reacted. He quickly typed back, Do not approach the location. The message is a warning. Minutes later his phone rang. A cold voice answered, official and calm. Dr. Hart, this is Agent Monroe, Science Division. We've already dispatched a probe to those coordinates. Elias's stomach dropped. You can't. You don't understand, it's not a discovery, it's a lock. But the line went silent. The call had ended. He sat there numb. The hum of the monitors filled the silence again. Then the signal changed, a sharp tone different from before. The symbols reappeared, but now they flashed red. The translation system struggled to keep up. The words formed slowly, one at a time. You sent them. You opened the path. They will wake. Outside, the desert sky was clear and endless. High above, a small probe broke Earth's orbit and sped toward the dark edge of the solar system. It carried cameras, scanners, and the encoded signal Elias had first unlocked. And something, somewhere, Arn was waiting. Elias watched the live telemetry feed in horror. "Turn it back," he whispered. "Please." He tried sending commands to stop the probe, but access was locked. The project was now government-controlled. He was no longer part of it. He grabbed his old notebook, flipping through pages filled with notes and diagrams. He found one phrase that haunted him since the first night. "Because you play." The code had chosen him, not because he was the smartest, but because he was human enough to make mistakes. The kind of mistakes that machines never would. The kind of mistakes that opened doors. He realized what had happened. His human mind had completed the pattern, and in doing so had released something sealed inside it. Hours later, the probe reached the coordinates beyond Neptune. The live feed streamed across the network. The image showed a dark metallic structure, round, cracked, covered in ice and dust. It wasn't a planet. It was a machine. It rotated slowly like it had been asleep for centuries. Strange lights flickered along its surface, in the same pattern as the alien code. The mission control feed filled with voices. Object is responding to signal input. Energy levels rising. Unidentified field activity detected, then static. The video cut to black. Elias stood frozen in front of his screen. The translation panel began to scroll again, automatically decoding new data streaming in from deep space. Containment breach. The builders stir. Silence the song. He stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. "No, no, no." He typed into the input terminal, desperate. "What can I do to stop it?" The response came instantly. "You cannot stop what has begun." They remember the last war. Elias's heart pounded. His hands shook as he typed again. Who are they? The ones who built worlds and broke them? He stared at those words for a long time. His mind couldn't fully grasp what he was reading. If this was true, then the builders weren't gods or myths. They were something far more terrifying. Engineers who had shaped galaxies like clay and destroyed them when they were done. And now, they were waking up. He tried one last command, a manual shutdown of the signal array. The observatory lights flickered as the power drained. But before he could finish, the main console glowed bright white. A final message appeared. Humanity must choose silence or survival. Then the entire system powered off. The screens went black. The hum stopped. Outside, the desert was quiet again. But in the far sky, Elias could see something new. A faint light near the horizon, like a star that wasn't there before. It pulsed once. Then twice. He knew what it was. The builders had heard the call. Elias sank to the floor, whispering into the dark. We should have never solved it. Miles away in a secure facility, the government team struggled to re-establish contact with the probe. For a moment, they succeeded. A final image appeared and a metallic surface opening releasing a blinding glow. Then the screen went black. A single transmission followed. 4 words in the alien code. Translated automatically by the AI Elias built. The gate is open. The world didn't know it yet, but the stars had already changed. For most people, life went on. Traffic, laughter, screens, noise. But high above Earth, something ancient was awake. In the old observatory, Dr. Elias Hart sat alone in the dark. The monitors were still dead. The servers burned out from the surge that came after the final message. The gate is open. He had tried to warn them. The Research Council, the military, the world. But his warnings went ignored, buried under layers of silence and classified reports. Now, there was only the faint hum of machines rebooting themselves, and the sound of wind scratching at the windows like invisible fingers. Elias stared at the blank screen and whispered, "What have I done?" It started with a flicker in the upper atmosphere. Satellites around Earth began to pick up a signal that wasn't coming from the planet. It was falling toward it. The pattern matched the same alien frequency Elias had decoded. But this wasn't just data. It was light. A thin, bright beam stretching from deep space straight to Earth's magnetic field. Every system that detected it crashed instantly. Communication satellites blinked out. Power grids surged. The northern sky lit up in colors no one had seen before. Shimmering green and violet fire, twisting like living auroras. In his observatory, Elias watched the skies flare through the skylight. It was beautiful, terrifying, He whispered, "You've arrived." The beam wasn't a weapon. It didn't destroy. It activated. His computers turned on by themselves. Screens filled with glowing blue script, the same alien code he had thought was lost. Only now the symbols were translating in real time. Transmission complete. Protocol accepted. System awakening. Elias's breath caught in his throat. System? What system? The speakers hissed, then a calm, soft voice spoke. Mechanical, yet human enough to sound familiar. Elias' heart. Human mind. Keyholder. Sequence recognized. He froze. How do you know my name? You opened the signal. The lock responds to the opener. His heart thudded in his chest. What are you? The reply came as the lights dimmed and the air seemed to thicken. We are the builder's memory. Outside, news channels reported strange phenomena. Machines behaving on their own, phones displaying patterns of light, and drones hovering in perfect synchronization. No one understood what was happening. Scientists called it a cosmic data storm, but Elias knew better. He remembered the words burned into his screen days ago. Humanity must choose silence or survival. He leaned close to the microphone. What is the builder's memory? What did I unlock? The seed of creation, the gift. The curse, he swallowed. Explain. The builders shaped life, not only in stars but in thought. You were not made by them, but born from what they left behind. Elias's mind spun. The words didn't make sense. You're saying humanity is part of them? You are the echo. We are the source. He sat in silence. The machine's hum deepened. The seed was placed in your system to remain silent. It was to awaken only when a mind solved the pattern, when your kind was ready. Elias felt his hands tremble. Ready for what? To remember. The monitors flickered again. Across the screen appeared thousands of symbols forming images, galaxies spinning, civilizations rising and falling, machines with hands made of light building entire worlds from dust. Then silence. One final line glowed bright. They sleep beneath your sun. Elias stood slowly, heart pounding. He walked to the window. The desert outside was glowing faintly under a pale green sky. The beam from space had faded, but something new shimmered in its place, a strange pulse beneath the Earth's horizon like the heartbeat of the planet itself. He whispered, "Beneath our sun." "Here?" "Yes," the voice replied softly. "A builder rests within your system, sleeping in the dark." Elias backed away from the console. Then the warning, "Do not wake them. That was about this." "Correct. Then why send the signal? Why send it to us?" There was a pause, long enough for his heart to calm, long enough to make him think maybe the voice was gone. Then it spoke again. "Because they heard you first." The lights flickered. Outside, the auroras twisted faster. Elias ran to the control panel, trying to disconnect the antenna, but the system refused. The computer's voice grew louder, almost pleading. "Containment compromised. Sequence complete. The builders are aware." In space, near the orbit of the dead star where the probe had vanished, something vast began to move. Sensors all across the solar system registered an anomaly. A structure the size of a moon, once dark, now glowing from within. It rotated, slow and graceful, releasing a pulse that rippled through space like the ring of a bell. The signal reached Earth in minutes. Every screen on the planet blinked at once. Every signal, every network, every light, for a heartbeat, unstopped. Then one word appeared everywhere, in every language: remember. In the observatory, Elias stood trembling as his screens filled with data too fast to read. The voice spoke again, calm and final. "You have opened what could not be opened. The builders will follow the signal. They will see what you have become," he whispered. "Will they destroy us?" "That depends," said the voice, fading like wind, "on whether they see you as their children or their mistake." The power went out. The hum ended. The silence returned. Elias sank into his chair, staring at the last faint glow on his screen, the alien spiral, pulsing once every few seconds like a heartbeat. He whispered, "If they're coming, then we'll be ready." Outside, the sky shimmered one last time, and then went still. Far beyond the stars, something answered the call.